Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. In this episode, we're diving into one of the most important books ever written on the subject of healing after violence and trauma, Trauma and Recovery by Judith Lewis Herman, MD. This book has shaped how therapists, survivors, and even society as a whole understand the impact of trauma. It looks not just at the personal experience of survivors of abuse, but also at the bigger picture, how trauma plays out on the stage of history, politics, and culture. Think of this as a journey, first through the darkness of what trauma does to the human mind, and then toward the light of recovery and healing. So, let's begin. Trauma, at its core, is the overwhelming of the human system. It's like an emotional earthquake, sudden, destabilizing, and leaving deep cracks in the foundation. Whether it comes from domestic abuse, war, political terror, or sexual violence, trauma leaves people feeling powerless, unsafe, and disconnected from themselves and others. Dr. Herman points out something fascinating. Trauma silences. Survivors often find it nearly impossible to put their experience into words. It's like their story is locked inside a vault. This silence isn't just personal, it's social. Throughout history, whenever people in power didn't want to face uncomfortable truths, like wartime atrocities or domestic violence, society looked away. Only when survivors break the silence and others are ready to listen can healing begin. Imagine trauma as an echo that doesn't fade. It repeats in flashbacks, nightmares, or sudden triggers. Survivors might relive the event as if it's happening all over again. Their nervous system stays on high alert, constantly scanning for danger. At the same time, many survivors experience numbness, as if their emotions have been shut down. It's like living with both an alarm bell ringing at full volume and a mute button pressed at the same time. Dr. Herman describes how this affects relationships, too. Trust, once broken by violence or betrayal, is incredibly hard to rebuild. Survivors often struggle to feel safe with others, even those who genuinely care for them. One of the most eye-opening ideas in the book is that private trauma and political terror are deeply connected. A battered woman, for example, may experience the same patterns of domination, secrecy, and silencing as someone living under a dictatorship. In both cases, the abuser, or the authoritarian regime, thrives on isolation and control. Breaking free requires not just inner strength, but also supportive communities willing to bear witness. This link shows us that healing isn't only about the individual. It's also about creating societies that refuse to look away, that choose to stand with survivors instead of silencing them. Recovery, Herman explains, is not a straight road. It happens in stages, and each one is essential. Safety. The very first step is creating a sense of safety. Without it, nothing else is possible. Survivors need to know they are physically and emotionally protected. It's like repairing the roof of a house before you can fix what's inside. Remembrance and mourning. Once safety is established, the next stage is remembering. Survivors begin to tell their story, piece by piece, often for the first time. This is painful, like reopening an old wound to clean it properly, but it allows true healing to begin. Reconnection. Finally, survivors move toward reconnection. They start to rebuild trust, relationships, and a sense of purpose. This doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means integrating the trauma into their life story so that it no longer defines them. Healing is not about erasing the past, it's about transforming it. Survivors can move from being defined by their wounds to being defined by their resilience. Herman reminds us that healing doesn't happen in isolation. Supportive communities, good therapy, friendships, and even political movements are part of the healing process. In other words, survivors need both safe spaces and strong allies. A beautiful metaphor the book gives us is this. Recovery is like learning to live in color again after years in black and white. The trauma will always be part of the picture, but it no longer dominates the canvas. And that brings us to the heart of trauma and recovery. Judith Herman shows us that trauma is both deeply personal and profoundly political. Violence seeks to silence, but healing begins the moment a story is told and truly heard. So if there's one core lesson to take away, it's this: safety, remembrance, and reconnection are the stepping stones toward recovery. And none of these steps can happen alone. Survivors heal best when they are surrounded by communities that believe them, support them, and walk beside them. So whether you're listening as a survivor, a helper, or simply a human being wanting to understand, remember this: recovery is possible. The past may shape us, but it doesn't have to define our future. Thank you for listening to this summary of trauma and recovery. Take care of yourself, and if this book resonates with you, consider reading it in full. It offers wisdom, compassion, and hope for anyone touched by trauma.